Dave Mustaine was asked by Ultimate Guitar interviewer Justin Beckner on who would he have gotten to sing for Megadeth if he only played guitar in the band, to which he replied, "I remember when I was in Metallica, we were all excited about John Bush. I think his singing was good for Armored Saint, but I don't think it was, in the long run, what I would have wanted." Then Sean Harris, the former singer from Diamond Head, "We were all in love with his voice. No one could sing better. But with that genius, sometimes comes lunacy, and I think that when Diamond Head fell apart, most fingers point towards Sean. A lot of times frontmen, unless they have their heads screwed on right, can be complete assholes. I remember when we were auditioning people, that was excruciatingly painful to deal with some of the personalities that came in." Asked whether any of the people who auditioned went on to join bands that our readers might know, Dave replied, "Nobody that I know of." Megadeth frontman Dave Mustaine singled out the Call of Cthulhu as his favorite song that he co-wrote back in the early Metallica days. He tells LA Weekly, "I like Phantom Lord and Metal Militia because they are very interesting songs. But I think if you were going to go for my favorite Metallica song that I wrote, it would probably have to be the Call of Cthulhu. It stands on itself. And when you have a song that can stand on itself without words, that's a big statement." Dave's contribution to the track revolves around a distinctive D minor arpeggio, which he later utilized in Hangar 18 with more rapid strumming. Additionally, Mustaine used that same bit on the When track off 2001's The World Needs a Hero. Further discussing the Metallica period, Dave remembered his brutal firing from the band and a 4-day bus ride from New York to California that followed. He said, "I was looking out the window. A lot. And it was excruciatingly painful. Because remember, I was living with them, had no job, no income, no money. They'd put me on the bus with no money. So I had no food money. No nothing. And I got on the bus and off I went for a 4-day journey with nothing to eat, nothing to drink. So that whole journey was a 4-day fucking hell. Learning how to panhandle. How to get people to buy you booze so you could sleep through the night on the bus. When you go into the bus station and the bus would stop and wait for another driver and you just pray to God you don't sleep through the connection and shit like that. Because I'd never done anything like that before in my life. It's different if you know what to do and where to go. And if you have money. Money's the key to all your problems. But if you can't even make a phone call? It's pretty fucked up." There has always been controversy over who is, or was the best Megadeth guitarist, but with Mustaine he is pretty clued up on it, as he ranked them all in a tweet not so long ago. As you can see, the rundown doesn't feature Megadeth's original second guitarist Greg Handevidt, who was in the band only in 1983, nor Slayer's Kerry King, who spent a brief period in the Death Fold during 1984, but does include Mike Albert, who performed as a touring member and temporary replacement for Chris Poland in 1985. As Kiko is the number one in this list, he did have some great things to say about him in an interview explaining to Rev 96.7. "I've been really fortunate to play with many great guitar players, but Kiko, every day, it's just a new experience seeing how deep his knowledge of playing is. Some other guitar players I've played with were really great at what they did, but their depth was only in one genre. For example, Chris Poland is a remarkable jazz player, and I had to kind of teach him metal, because he didn't know anything about it. And Marty was very much into metal but also had a lot of Middle Eastern playing styles. Now Kiko has metal, he's got bossa nova, he's got classical, flamenco, so many other different styles, the possibilities are endless. And I think that's evident on this new record, Dystopia. The guitar playing went up considerably from the last record. Who is your favorite Megadeth guitarist? And would you agree with Dave Mustaine's opinion? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below."
Dave Mustaine says that his initial vision for Megadeth was to destroy Metallica. Asked by a fan earlier this year on Twitter what his measure of success was when starting Megadeth and what his vision for the band was, Dave responded, "My measure of success was if I ate that day or not, and my vision was destroy Metallica and stop living in a van. Good thing I got over my animosity for leaving the band. I'm glad we reconciled. Where's the big 4 shows?" Mustaine was a member of Metallica for less than 2 years, from 1981 to 1983, before being dismissed and replaced by Kirk Hammett. He went on to form Megadeth and achieve worldwide success on his own. Mustaine feuded with the members of Metallica for more than 2 decades before finally patching things up over the last few years. He has jammed with his ex-bandmates on several occasions during Big Four shows and at Metallica's 30th anniversary concerts in 2011. He also recently expressed the struggles he had with escaping Metallica's shadow, saying, "It wasn't easy escaping from Metallica's shadow. It takes effort and energy to get a band off the ground, never mind when you have an enormous band stepping on top of your head every time you get above water." Giving the nu metal genre quite a bashing, Megadeth frontman Dave Mustaine noted he'd rather have his eyelids pulled out than listen to the popular late 90s style nu metal. Telling Faster Louder how happy he is for the new wave of modern musicians, calling them a new breed of players. With all these new vocal styles, Dave focused on the past, adding, "They had this wave of metal that came through in the 90s, and it was called nu metal. I don't know if you remember it, but it was so bad. I would have rather have my eyelids pulled out." Asked if it's Limp Bizkit and Linkin Park he's talking about, Mustaine explained, No, I can't even remember their names. Linkin Park, those guys are good at what they do. I have no problems with those guys. But I wouldn't call them nu metal." Pinpointing the groups he has issues with, he continued, "I'm talking about the bands that wouldn't do guitar solos. Guys who get out there and they do rhythms and stuff but they'd never do a guitar solo. It's like, come on, play a solo." But apparently solos aren't cool. "It's just funny, because I come from the school of AC/DC and Led Zeppelin, and man, the riff had to be kick-ass, the lyrics had to make sense, and when it was time for the solo had to rip your face off," Dave said. And hey, I may not be part of the family anymore, right at the forefront, but I'm the crazy uncle. Dave Mustaine also let loose on nu metal bands during an interview with Cry of the Wolf, saying, "During that whole period a couple of years ago, when no one was doing guitar solos, we had a couple of bands go out with us, and I despised them. And the reason they went out with us was because the label said you need to do this. That was the worst part of my career during that whole nu metal thing. You know, there were no solos, because the guitar players weren't good enough to do solos." In an interview with the self-proclaimed libertarian Alex Jones on Infowars.com, Megadeth's Dave Mustaine opened up about his thoughts on playing with Satanic Bands. Dave Mustaine, a born Christian, talked about setting the ground rules on who he would or would not share the stage with. According to him, he said, "If I do play, there's certain things I kind of want to veer away from. I don't want to play with any Satanic Bands." He narrowed it down a bit further, saying, "I'll play with bands that have darkness in them, because we all have a little darkness in us. Or we wouldn't be human. But guys that are confessed Satanists, I don't really have time for that. I can control my emotions, because I know it's not the sinners, it's the sin." He also talked about his refusal to share the stage with the openly satanic Swedish metal act Dissection at an Israeli festival back in 2005, saying,
"The truth of the matter is that when I first had gotten, my life back in order back in 2002, I had made some changes. I had a severe injury to my arm, and when my career had stopped, it made me really take a hard, sideways look at everything. And I figured, you know what, just for now, because I don't really know a lot about what I'm doing, I want to make sure that I don't play with any bands that have junkies in them, because I can't be around, guys that are doing heroin because of the temptation. Mm-hmm. And because, I'm trying to have something in my life that is a power greater than myself, so that I'll get myself back in shape. And I don't want to be hanging around with guys that are going to, be dangerous for me spiritually, because I had just decided that, I was going to start following a spiritual path. I figured, I don't want to go back, because I was into witchcraft and black magic and everything like that, so I know about that stuff, and I figured, I'm just going to try and avoid that stuff. Never said that I hated anybody, just didn't want to play with them, and I was so curious to see the poster for the concert, because it was written in the Hebrew font, or script, whatever you call it, and then I saw the band Dissection, and I thought, well, that's a cool name, and I looked it up, and I went, uh-oh. So I told the promoter, I said, look, we can't play. We're not going to play that festival. I never said kick them off.
Well, yeah, of course, yeah.
That was the promoter's mistake. The promoter kicked them off. And it's hard enough as it is in music to get concerts, so I would never kick a band off one of my shows. I would rather me not do it. And when I said, look, we don't want to do it, they unfortunately harmed that band, regardless whether the guy was a convicted murderer, he was a satanic person. You know, we all have a little bit of darkness in us. Now, I've never killed anybody, you know, killed a couple of guitars, but, you know, I've never killed anybody. And, you know, the sad thing is at the end of the day, the poor guy had committed suicide. So, you know, he was a tortured soul. And I know that for me, the reason that I turned to black magic and witchcraft and stuff like that was I had spiritual abuse and so many things had been done wrong in my life, and there was so much hypocrisy with the people that had said that they were Christians or you know, whatever, Catholic, whatever, the people in my life. They would say one thing and they would do something else. So I really regretted having spent any time in a church, and I really resented people who said that they believed in God, because you would see them do one thing and then the next day they would do something else, and it's just very confusing as a kid. And I think that's why a lot of us end up, you know, being spiritually misled. Probably part of the reason why that poor chap did that too. But, you know, we were supposed to play a show with them in France, and they didn't get kicked off that show. You know, a lot of stuff went around about another band that had a name that, you know, was kind of offensive to me. But, you know, that's a personal thing. It has nothing to do with the band, their quality of music.
Yeah, but you can expect the producer of a show to cancel Megadeth when it's standing like right opposed to Dissection or Rotting Christ, because like those are little bands and Megadeth is, you know, that's a Megadeth. Huge band. That's Megadeth, you know. So
I know, but guys, what you got to understand is my heart for those guys has nothing to do. You know, my decision not to play with them doesn't have anything to do with their value and worth as people, because I'm sure they're probably really great people. Sometimes we name our band stuff to get a reaction out of people, and it's not really who or what we are. And, you know, there are bummers. There are consequences. Naming Megadeth, I can't even tell you how offensive it was. There's a huge radio station in Los Angeles called KLOS. And we had done a song, and after the song was over, they go, and that was a cover of an old Alice Cooper song. Coming up next, they didn't even say our name. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't say Megadeth on the radio. So, it has nothing to do with the person's worth or anything like that, because I believe we're all valuable, and you know, it's just a personal preference that I had at the time. I've learned a lot more now. So, you know, if the opportunity came up to play with bands that were contrary to what my personal, political, spiritual, or any kind of moral values that I have, you know, that's something between me and my relationship with God, and you know, I don't push that on anybody anymore. At the beginning, you know, I didn't know, and I wanted to play it safe. And I think that anybody who would judge me and say, oh, well, you know what, Dave made a huge mistake. He just joined a new club, and he didn't know all the rules, so instead of breaking the rules, he said, fuck you to everybody. That's not me, man. I like to do things right. So I played it safe. I learned a lot about it, and I've opened my mind up to it.
Dave Mustaine shared his thoughts on Meshuggah after getting to hear the band a bit more often during ongoing joint tour with Megadeth, telling Cat Rock, "They're really exciting. It's not even because the drumming is so complicated, really it's just 4/4 timing the majority of the time. But the way the songs are, and how unique they are, they take on a characteristic of their own. You could so easily get lost trying to follow. What do they call that? Algebra metal or something like that? All these timings and stuff like that. You know, the stuff I listened to growing up, the new wave of British heavy metal. It was straightforward riffing like AC/DC. And then going into Priest and Maiden, and then getting into heavier stuff, Motorhead, Diamond Head, Merciful Fate, everything was straightforward. So having a tour with Megadeth, Meshuggah, Tesseract, and Lil Ake where we have these young exciting bands, it's always really entertaining, because I get to see stuff I never would have been compelled to pick up in a record store. It opens my mind a lot. I remember the first time I took out this really great band called the Dillinger Escape Plan. I couldn't understand it, but I just knew they were really exciting. It's the stuff you don't understand you most often miss out on. I wanted to understand, so we took them out on Gigantor. It was a great experience. I thought they were terrific. And that was my introduction to that type of crazy, cerebral metal." He also talked about drummer Dirk Verburen, saying, "As good as Adler was, Dirk's feet are more advanced. I didn't think that was possible, because Chris is such a great drummer. There's a reason why Chris recommended Dirk, and I love him for that. I think that he's a really solid friend for making that recommendation, cause a lot of guys wouldn't do that. He's a true friend, and I was stoked having him in the studio. Dirk is one of the most pleasant, easy to get along with guys I've ever met in my life. I'll walk up to him, and he'll smile, and lean forward, and pat me on the back. He goes, "How's it going, buddy?" I could say, "Oh man, anything." "Oh, okay buddy." He smiles and pats me, cause he's just a happy guy.